On today's show, we're going to talk about what happens when you retire, start Social Security, and then life turns your plans upside down. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to empower and educate women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner with over 25 years of experience, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. This episode is based on a real life listener question that includes retirement, divorce, Social Security, and unfortunately, potentially having to go back to work. With the increasing rate of gray divorce, all things many women may have to face in their later years. This is one that is worth unpacking very carefully. And joining me today again is Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. It's very hot here. I don't know
Well,
what's it's muggy and hot, and we are in Texas, but
and it's August.
unnatural. It seems like I don't know. It's just maybe it's the where I'm recording too is a little steamier than normal. I don't know what's going on, but
The little steam coming up off your head there.
I don't know what's going on. It's a little yeah. Even the steamy part is the worst part. Hot is normal, but I
Yeah,
feel like I'm in a sauna or something.
we'll get through it.
We'll do it. Well, let's get after it.
All
So,
right.
so I mean, this is one I'm gonna nerd out a little bit on, and you get to nerd out with me too. How's that?
Great. Can't wait.
So here's the listener question. I'm gonna actually read this out, and she did ask me not to share her name, so I'm gonna honor that. But here's the question that inspired our conversation today. My husband retired in January and is receiving full Social Security. We agreed I would go ahead and apply for Social Security too, but I would only receive half of his since I'm only 62. So now he's gone nuts and took off after 36 years of marriage. So my question is, I will have to go back to work. Do I need to report to Social Security to stop my $1,523 a month? And how do I go about doing that?
Oh, okay. Well, first of
there's a
all, I'm
lot
sorry
going
to
on here.
hear that.
Right. I know it's one
Um,
of the, again, I definitely wanted to honor her keeping her privacy, but yeah, it's one of those that has so many different moving parts that I really think it's valuable to go through this because there's a lot we can learn by going through it. And I just want to go step by step because there's going to be different pieces of this that I think people can take depending on their situation, whether it's again, how do I stop Social Security? It's well, what do I do if this happens or that happens? So I think it's a really interesting case. And I think it again is worth going through just kind of piece by piece. So what I want to do first, I want to cover how we determine what kind of Social Security benefit that she's receiving. Because she does reference it, but I'm not quite sure it's accurate. And I didn't get a response back to my email. So for those that happen to be interested in sending a question, yes, I do read them. I read the question and I will respond if there's any clarifications that I think would be helpful in responding to you with an appropriate answer. We'll talk about the process for withdrawing Social Security benefits or how do you withdraw your application. We're also going to talk about the earnings test and how that could affect her benefits if she does return to work. We'll also talk about why going back to work could actually increase her future benefit, how that might work. And then we'll also tell you about what to know about ex-spouse and survivor benefits at some point down the road, should that be applicable as well. Now, we talked about the strategy of withdrawing your application back on episode 47, where we talked about three different strategies, three little known strategies, this being one of those. So I definitely encourage you to go back and take a listen to that. That would be, you can find that at the simplyretirementpodcast.com/47. And for all the links and resources that we're going to share in this episode, you can again visit the Simply Retirement Podcast. And of course, don't forget, if you have a question, if you have a topic like this or a specific retirement challenge that you would like some help with, you can go to the simplyretirementpodcast.com/ask Eric.
hey.
So the first thing I wanted to do is talk about what I think the benefit is she's getting. So she references that she's getting half of his, but
Mhm.
she also references that amount is $1,523,
Okay.
which I don't think is a spousal benefit. And let me tell you why. So she says she's 62. So she applied to 62, which a spousal benefit, the maximum would be about 32.5% if she applies at 62 of what he's at, 32.5% of what he would be his full retirement age benefit. So if I do the math and kind of back into what that amount might be, if she's getting $1,500 a month or so, and that's 32.5% of his, that means his benefit is about almost $4,700, which is not
Okay.
possible. That's
Okay.
way too high.
All right.
The maximum full retirement age benefit in 2025 is about $3,800.
Okay.
So what I think, it just happens to be half of his, but it's actually her own retirement benefit, I believe. And that's the one that I did ask that, but I didn't get a response back. But I do think that would be the case where it's actually her own retirement benefit, but it just happens to be half of his, which is important when we're talking about some of the things some of the options that she'll have and some of the decisions that she'll need to make.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So again, what I think is most likely explanation is she's receiving her own reduced benefit. Again, she applied early at 62, which means she's getting less than what she could have had she waited till full retirement age. But I do believe this is going to be her benefit and not a spousal benefit in this case.
Okay.
So let's talk about what happens. Can she withdraw her application? So one of the things she said is they applied in January, they retired in January, and we're going to go on the assumption from at least the way I read her question is that they also applied for Social Security benefits in January. So the quick answer is yes. She's got 12 months from the date of application to fully withdraw her application. Now, again, here's one of the key things is you can withdraw your application within 12 months, but you have to pay back every dollar.
That's always the tough part, right?
That's the tough part. And that's we're going to talk about some of these other variables you might want to consider as we go through this as well. But that's the key thing. And specifically, if we're talking about forms, if we're actually going to that level of detail, it's form SSA 521. That's the form that you use to apply to have your application withdrawn. Do you apply to have your application withdrawn? Does that make sense? I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah. To say, I changed my mind. I don't want
Right.
it.
To scrap it all, to start from
Yeah.
scratch. So that it's SSA form 521. You fill that out. And I won't go into too much detail on that, but basically, obviously, you're saying on there who I am. One of the interesting things, you actually put your spouse on there. If you happen to be receiving a spousal benefit, you would have to put your spouse and then you as the recipient, but you have to reference what benefit, what type of benefit am I receiving? So if
Okay.
it's just hers, if it's just her benefit, like I think it is, she would just need to put her information on there and just say, hey, I'm withdrawing my retirement application. But if it was spousal, if you're withdrawing your spousal applications, you'd have to put your husband, yourself, and say, I'm withdrawing from spousal benefits.
Okay.
So just not a minor detail that I think is important to cover there as well. So then we start thinking about it again. So the big key is again, you got to return all those payments. Now, in her case, she's not on Medicare yet because she's not 65. But should that be the case, that's another big point is you have to pay back whatever is being withheld to cover your Medicare premiums as well. You got to pay that back as well. And then you would have to start paying your own Medicare premiums through a quarterly bill. So if anybody wonders, well, how do I pay off Medicare? If I delay my Social Security and I'm on Medicare, I'm over 65, how do I pay for it? They just send you a bill instead of deducting it from your Social Security payment. That make sense?
Yeah, so you're saying that, like, the discount we get from being on Medicaid is what you have to pay back? Like, I thought we paid for Medicaid.
Medicare. So Medicare. So
Medicare,
once you
sorry.
turn 65 and enroll in Medicare, you pay for Part B. Part A is free. Part B you pay for. If you happen to withdraw your Social Security application, let's say you're 65 and you just started, 65 in 6 months, you say, okay, kind of similar situation. I need to withdraw my application because I want my benefit to keep growing. I'm going to go back to work, whatever reason you might have.
Right.
Well, if you started Social Security and Medicare, and you say, okay, I'm withdrawing my Social Security benefit, you've got to then say, okay, you've part of your payment, your Social Security benefit is going to cover your Medicare Part B premiums as well.
Okay.
So if I withdraw my Social Security application, I've also got to pay back, and I got to pay back all those benefits I'd received up to that point. You've got to include your Medicare premium payments as well in that.
Okay.
So even though they went somewhere else, they didn't go to you. You still got to pay those back because you got to pay back 100% of the Social Security benefit that you have received up to that point.
Well, that stinks. So, like,
It
if you
does.
can
It
avoid this, please do.
Why? And they're very valid. Just spit that out. Very valid reasons why you might consider this. And again, we talked about that in episode 47, where you decide retirement's just not my thing. I need to keep working. So I applied for Social Security, but I'm going to go back to work. Now I've got the earnings test and some other things that I've got to deal with. So there are very valid reasons why you might do that. You just got to be aware of all the implications.
Okay.
So then that gets us to understanding the earnings test. So we talked about that if I withdraw my application, I got to pay all that money back. That's the big component of that,
Right.
of withdrawing your application. Well, what if we say, okay, I just can't do that. I don't have the money in order to do that. So it doesn't say specifically that they're getting divorced or that they've gotten divorced. So we kind of make some assumptions here. But if we just say, okay, that because of the circumstances, she's going to have to go back to work, but maybe she doesn't have the resources to pay it back. What happens then?
Okay.
And that's where the earnings test comes in. So basically, the earnings test says if I retire before my full retirement age and I continue to work and receive Social Security, I could potentially have to pay some of those benefits back if I earn too much. That's where the earnings test comes in. So just kind of quickly recap what that means. So if you're in 2025, we'll use that as our example. If you're under full retirement age, as she is, you can earn up to $23,400 without any penalties.
Okay.
As soon as you start earning more than that, for every $2 that you earn above that amount, $1 of your Social Security benefit will get withheld. Make sense? So let's give you an example. Let's say you earn $40,000. That's $16,600 above that limit. That would result in Social Security withholding about $8,300 of your benefit,
Okay.
which is about 6 months. So it's not an inconsequential number. So it's
Right.
it's something to be aware of. Now, I always want to point out when we're talking about this earnings test, there's a couple of key things you want to be aware of as well. Again, especially if you're not in a situation where you can withdraw your application and pay it back. The first thing is when we're talking about the earnings test, if you have to, if you have that benefit withdrawn from you because you made too much money, that money is not lost forever. Okay. Once you reach full retirement age, so based on her, she's most likely 67. Once you reach your full retirement age, the Social Security will then recalculate your benefit at full retirement age to account for those months that were withheld for the money that you gave up. It'll
Okay.
get recalculated into your full retirement age benefit going forward. Again, it's not a lump sum payment though. That's also key to understand. You will get that money back, but it's going to be given back over time, not as a lump sum. Not as they take it from you as a lump sum, but they don't
Right.
give it back to you as a lump sum.
Yeah. They make the rules, they don't have to
Right?
follow
That
them.
is right. Absolutely. Now, here's another key thing, and all depends on timing. So once you are within 1 full year of your retirement age, so again, we'll assume if her full retirement age is 67, we're talking about once she turns 66, that earnings limit goes up quite a bit. So in 2025, for example, the earnings test amount, if you're within 1 full year of full retirement age, is 62,160. So it's almost three times.
Right.
So again, depending on your earning situation, obviously that's could be significant. And the amount that you might lose, the ratio changes as well. So for every $1, you lose $1 for every $3 you earn above that amount. Once you're within 1 full year, full retirement age.
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's one other variable in here. We'll share one other piece of information that I think is important. In your first year after starting Social Security, the earnings test is actually a monthly test rather than an annual test. So actually, if you can't really say, okay, if I retire in the middle of the year and I earned half a year of salary and it puts me above that limit, I don't want to, and might cause me to choose not to start Social Security.
Right.
And it's actually the key thing to know is that if I say, let's say I start July 1st, I retire and I start Social Security July 1 and I work the first 6 months of the year, the earnings test, you take that 23,400 divided by 12 and it becomes a monthly earnings test rather than an annual test. So it only really applies to you for that last 6 months of the year.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So again, still obviously it could cause a pretty significant cash flow disruption if you say, well, I've got to work and I can't pay the money back. And all of a sudden I've got to write this big check to Social Security Administration to pay back these benefits because I earned too much money. So let's talk about, I think one of the key things is, again, we don't know whether this applies to her or not, but I think it's worth the conversation. And that is that returning to work could actually help her from a long-term perspective.
Okay.
So when we think about how Social Security is calculated, what your benefit is based on, it is based on the highest 35 years of earnings adjusted for inflation. So as we all know, women are more likely than men to have years missed because of caregiving, whether it's on, early in the career when they were taking care of children, or maybe later in the career or later in life when they were taking care of parents, or whatever the case might be, they're more likely to have zero or low income years. So for her, we think about, okay, does it make sense for her if she does have to go back to work because of cash flow needs? That actually could, if she's got some 0 years or low income years, that could actually improve her benefit. And that's whether she's to actually withdraw her application or she doesn't. Even if you're receiving Social Security, if you're earning money and it's more than you've earned in the past, it could still actually continue to increase your benefit, even if you're receiving those benefits.
Okay.
So it is, trying to put a shining a light on a pretty difficult topic, but it is something that you want to be aware of. That if you do have to go back to work in your retirement years, you might at least be aware of whether that's going to have a positive impact on your Social Security benefits. And as we talked about before, I think it's very likely that she's receiving her own benefit.
Okay.
So whether she withdraws her application altogether, or she continues working and just has to worry about the earnings test, either way, this could be a positive from the standpoint of it could increase her benefit at some point down the road, depending on what her earnings history looks like.
That's good. I'll take that.
It is. It is. So again, try to put a positive spin on as much as we can, but it's
Right.
also important to just be aware of some of these variables that are out there.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the future potential ex-spousal and survivor benefits that she would want to be aware of as well as you start putting together. We talk about this a lot when we're talking about retirement planning. When you're on the other side of divorce or on the other side of becoming a widow, we got to start putting these pieces back together and figure out what is life going to look like going forward.
Mhm.
So that's where things like, again, survivor benefits may come into play that at least she needs to be aware of those. So we talked about she was married for 36 years. So if they do actually end up divorced, if they already are divorced, she could be eligible for divorce spouse benefits. And again, I think most likely in her situation, she's already receiving her own. But if she withdraws her application, there could be some decision points there about, okay, how does that change my options and what does that look like going forward?
Right.
Now, again, if our benefit is already 1,500 a month on her own record, the likelihood is she's going to ultimately be receiving her own benefit. And there's also one other thing I want to point out. It's called these deemed filing rules. And this was actually something that went into place in 2015 or voted in 2015, went into effect 2016, where we used to have these really cool rules where you could apply for spousal benefits and let your own benefit continue growing and then switch.
Right.
That's gone. So just to burst your bubble right there.
Is that new?
It's 2016. So that it's
Oh,
been in effect for a while. The last
okay.
few people was a 2022. I'd have to go back and look. We had a few clients that actually were able to take advantage of that right at the end there.
Okay.
But that basically there's nobody else that's eligible to do that. Nobody else that's grandfathered into the old rules. So now
Boo.
we all fall into what's called deemed filing, which
Okay.
basically says if I apply for Social Security, regardless of whether I'm filing for spousal, ex-spousal, my own, but whatever I'm applying for whichever one is the most at that time. And that's
Mhm.
the one I'm going to get.
Okay.
So there is no switching unless eventually we're talking about survivor benefits. And we'll talk about that here in just a second.
Okay.
So basically, when she filed at 62, she's getting the highest of whichever option she was eligible for, whether it was spousal or her own.
Okay.
In that case, again, I think it's her own. So again, if she withdraws her application, now we've got some other factors that'll come in. Again, does she continue to work? And if she withdraws it, it's basically like starting from scratch.
Mhm.
So her benefit will continue to increase as she gets older as well. So the closer she gets to full retirement age, and again, if it's hers, she might actually have a pretty decent benefit by the time she's 70 if she has the option of continuing to let it increase all the way to 70.
That would be the best.
That would be the best, most likely. Again, depending on the circumstances and what her cash flow situation is and what the division of assets. We talked about that in a couple episodes ago. So you got to look at all these things and again, start putting the pieces of this puzzle together. So as we look at her specific situation, so even if she gets divorced, again, she is going to be eligible for widow survivor benefits. So I want to talk about those qualifications just so we're clear on that. So again, she's 62 currently. Again, we already know the marriage lasted at least 10 years. It lasted 36. So she's okay on that number. That 10 years is key. Whether we're talking ex-spousal benefits or survivor benefits, you had to have been married for at least 10 years. She's over 60. If she's 62, again, that's the earliest you could receive survivor benefits is 60 or 50 if you happen to be disabled. Again, for the most part, we're talking 60. So she's already surpassed that. As far as survivor benefits, obviously she's already past 60, so we don't have to worry about the remarriage rules,
Okay.
which basically say as long as if you can get remarried and still be eligible for survivor benefits, as long as the marriage, the second marriage or additional marriage, we'll call it, happens after the age of 60. If you're earlier than age 60, if you remarried prior to age 60, you're no longer eligible for survivor benefits on that other spouse.
Okay.
Now, one time, just to quickly touch on ex-spousal benefits in case that happens to be what she's receiving. Again, I think it's worth talking about this. If you remarry, regardless of age, you are now no longer really eligible for ex-spousal benefits, that 50% number, right? So if you remarry at
Okay.
any point, that's gone.
You can't go
Now,
back to, say,
right,
husband number 1 and say, "I want a half of his."
right.
Okay.
Not unless that additional marriage ends at some point. Now you get options, you get choices at that point. But as
Okay.
long as you're married, you are no longer eligible for any type of ex-spousal benefits off of a previous spouse's record.
Got it.
Sense?
Yep.
Now, we'll quickly touch on this again. The survivor benefit, if we already know that it's going to be most likely greater than her own, because of the calculations we went through earlier, saying that, okay, if hers is 50% of his currently, even though I think it's her own benefit, his is actually twice as much as hers. So it's going to be the greater benefit. So at some point down the road, if he predeceases her, she will have that option of switching to his benefit as her survivor benefit.
But that's half, right?
No, that's survivor benefit. Survivor benefit is 100% of what he's receiving at the time he passes.
Oh,
So we
I
got,
don't
again,
think I
that's always the
knew
key to
that.
distinguish. We got ex-spousal benefits. We got ex-spousal survivor benefits. Those are two different things. Ex-spousal benefits are maximum 50%. Ex-spouse survivor benefits are 100% of what your ex-spouse was receiving at the time he passes or what he would have been
Okay.
eligible for if he passes before actually starting his own benefit. But again, we already know he started his. So if he were to pass tomorrow, that's what she would get. If he passes 20 years from now, that's what she would get.
Okay. Got it.
All right. So I just want to walk through kind of the key takeaways before we wrap everything up. So again, just thinking about her situation. So again, she said she's receiving $1,523 a month. Again, I think it's most likely her own benefit, not a spousal benefit, simply because the math doesn't work as a spousal benefit. She can withdraw her application using Form SSA 521, whether she filed for her own benefit or had started receiving spousal benefits, as long as it's within 12 months of her application, but she must repay all those benefits that she's received up to this point. And we're talking about, about what, 7, 8 months, 9 months, but then by the time this episode comes out. So whenever she goes through the process, she's got to pay back the full amount she's received basically for this entire year. If she doesn't withdraw, the earnings test could reduce her monthly benefit based on how much she earns. And we don't know what that looks like. But again, you want to be aware of that earnings test. If you're working and receiving Social Security benefits, you got to be aware of the earnings test. One thing I'll touch on just because I didn't hit on this as we were going through that section. Once you get to full retirement age, you are good. You can earn as much as you want to. So we
Oh,
said if you're more than one full year from full retirement, it's about 23,000 a year that you can earn, 23,400. Once you're within one full year of your full retirement age, it goes up about 3 times as much and your reduction gets reduced. Your reduction gets reduced. That's a bad way to say that, wasn't it? Yeah. The amount that gets reduced goes down. So
okay. Yes.
once you get to full retirement age and you're receiving Social Security, you can earn as much as you want to, need to, whatever the case might be.
All right. Good to know.
And then let's see, make sure again, returning to work could increase her benefit depending on the circumstances. If goes back to work and she's replacing lower earning years or 0 years, that could actually work in her favor to increase whatever benefits she's eligible for down the road. So that's important to know as well. And again, if her ex-husband passes away, she would likely qualify for that higher survivor benefit at some point down the road. And
Mhm.
that's regardless of whether she gets remarried or whatever the circumstances might be. She's going to be eligible for that simply because she's 62 at the time all this is happening. So again, from a planning perspective, looking at what the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years might look like, that's a part I think is important. And we're talking about, again, putting this puzzle together.
Okay. Yep.
So everything makes sense. Did you enjoy nerding out with me on Social Security a little bit there?
I always love nerding out with you, Eric. Come on now.
I know, I know. Well, any other thoughts or clarifications? Anything that just didn't quite jive, or any other
No,
questions that come out of that conversation?
I think that it's all pretty clear. I'm glad you let me know that there is a difference between the survivor benefits and the ex-spousal benefits because that's a whole different thing. So,
And that is one of those one of the most confusing parts of it because when you hear spouse or you hear ex-spouse,
mhm,
people either think one or the other.
right.
They think, okay, well, if that's the 50% one or that's the 100% one, there's almost always confusion when it comes to that, which is actually which. So that survivor benefit, talking survivor benefit, it used to be called widow's benefits. That
Okay.
probably makes it a little more actually clear, but because actually it's the same rules, whether it's the man or the woman, they just went with survivor benefit as a more gender neutral term, we'll call it.
Right.
But ultimately, that's what you got to be. So, just understanding the difference between spousal and ex-spousal benefits and survivor benefits, whether that survivor benefits based on your current spouse's record or an ex-spouse's record.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that was confused.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, right? That's why I nerd out on this stuff.
All right.
But again, I thought this was worth going through. Again, it's one of those situations that got a lot of moving pieces. Hopefully, there's somebody that can pick different things out. Hopefully, don't not a whole lot will have to take the entire situation and apply it to themselves. But taking bits and pieces that might be applicable to a circumstance that they're dealing with. And like I said, if you've got a question, you've got a scenario like this that you would like some guidance with, feel free to go to the website, check it out, plug it in, let me know. Again, if you want to keep yourself private, I'm more than happy to honor that request. Well, Wendy, thank you for joining me once again. If you're facing a Social Security decision, especially during a major life change like we just talked about, you do not have to go it alone. If you're looking for a personalized retirement plan that helps you make smart decisions around your income, your investments, your taxes, You can visit getmysimplyretirementroadmap.com to learn more about our Simply Retirement Roadmap process, where we can help you answer a lot of these big questions. We'll help you figure out when Social Security benefits, when to take them, when to file, how do you want to coordinate those benefits with your other retirement income in a smart way. That's it for today's episode. As a reminder, for all the links and resources mentioned today, again, you can go to the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Please don't forget to like, follow, and share the show. Until next time, please remember retirement is not the end of the road, it's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road, it is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.